Tere hommikust kõigile. Minu nimi on Priit Reiska.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Priit Reiska, and I am the acting director for Tallinn University. With me today to inform you about COVID and answer your questions, we have the COVID commission member Helen Solveri-Sepping, the pro-rector, and Erik Mikkus. From our last information hour, 3.5 weeks have passed. That's a very positive sign. It shows that in 3.5 weeks, we haven't seen very drastic changes. As of today, we have 12 persons who have tested positive at the university. Eli has gotten better, but it's worth noting that nobody has been infected on campus. It has all been outside of campus. So what does it mean? On campus, we don't have any infection incidents, and that is very positive. Therefore, the general recommendations are the same as they were 3.5 weeks ago. And although we do have some changes towards the worse in the external environment, and here inside the university, we don't see that. Therefore, we have also changed the risk plan. We have different levels, green, yellow, blue, and red. And at the beginning, we already went to the yellow level, which meant that we are going through with classes as normal, but if needed, we'll use remote learning. We had risk assessments from two inputs, the outside environment, how many infections there are in general in Tallinn, and the inside environment, how the university campus is faring. And since the developments are such that the outside environment has worsened somewhat, at the same time there are no changes in the university campus, then we found that the outside environment indicator, which we had set to 50, we will change and we will take out the concrete number. Another reason why we did that is because all these indicators were set according to our best of knowledge from spring. And we do know that the government has also changed their approach, and many specialists have recommended not overreacting. Next, when it comes to organizing events, as it stands right now, we have set out in our plan all events that are not related to the main activities, education activities of the university should be cancelled. And this means both the students as well as the academic personnel of the university. And by way of a note here, if we should arrive at the red level, then we should not have any events at all at the university. Our general recommendations for learning processes and for courses are the same. If you are able to avoid contact, do that. If you can use remote learning and it doesn't impact negatively on the quality of the learning, then that should be used. Then next, dispersal. If we have to be on campus together, it is reasonable to keep a distance. If that is not possible, then wearing a mask is mandatory. So if you can't keep a distance, you have to wear a mask. There have been a lot of questions when it comes to the question of the burden of work of the professors and lecturers. There have been those who say that it's different than in normal conditions, and that is true, because if a professor has to carry out remote teaching and has students in the auditorium at the same time, it is definitely more complicated. So the question is, should the professor be the one to decide whether the learning is remote, on location, or hybrid? And we do see that this is the most reasonable approach, because the professor knows their course and the contents the best. They can choose the methods of teaching the best. So the professor will be the one to decide the mode in which the course will be carried out. So what are the alternatives? One alternative would be that the university decides everything will be moved online. Currently, we don't see that as a reasonable solution, primarily because we don't have infection spreading inside the university. Of course, it might happen that this is the best time to carry out those seminars, laboratory practices, and other practices that must be done on location, because we don't know how the things will develop. Another alternative might be that the university would mandate everybody to be present. We have never done that under normal circumstances either. We do have voluntary and recommended participation, and certainly the university cannot take up on itself to force people to attend, especially those who are in the risk groups. The way in which the studies are organized, if you need counsel, of course, the best counseling is your colleagues. They have the experience. It's worth exchanging those experiences. Then curators, heads of curriculums, and the e-learning center, together with the Education Innovation Center and the BFM, the Digital Technology Institute, they have all organized many different training courses, and we have some training courses ahead of us as well to deal with the issues around COVID. So we have remote learning and web-based contact learning trainings coming up. So if you feel a need, it is definitely reasonable to get in touch with the e-learning center or ask your colleagues from your institute about how to participate at a training that interests you. Remote work is something I want to touch upon next. We have said that remote work, especially for those in the risk group, has to be agreed to with your immediate supervisor. And the remote work means, first and foremost, working in another location, not at another time. And this is important in the interest of being accessible. If we're working together in this organization, then a person who is working remotely still has to be accessible to others. So those are the first, the primary messages about the current situation. So compared to the beginning of the semester, we don't have any big changes. And among students, these 12 infections, if we spread them over time, it's quite a low number. At the beginning of the semester, we were afraid of worse conditions. And right now, the biggest challenges we see is in the organization of studies. How do we carry out studies in a way that those who can't make it to campus for one reason or another could still participate in learning? As I mentioned last time, the situation right now is more complicated in the spring, in a sense, because in the spring nobody had any choice. We do have choices now, but I am convinced that the choice to partially be present here for the quality of the studies in the end is much better. Now I would like to give the word over to Erik Mikkus. Good morning. I would like to present the students' view on this strange situation. Life at the university, of course, has been quite chaotic and a bit different than usually, and it's not the type of higher education that we were prepared to obtain, but the situation is what it is, and we have to first and foremost recognize that health is the most important thing, and we have to recognize that nothing can actually go ahead as it did regularly. So the health is our shared responsibility. We are responsible for our own health and for the health of others. That is why we have the requirement to wear masks in auditoriums where the capacity is over 50%. So we have to watch that we wear masks and demand that our fellow students also wear masks. Because if we don't feel safe, it's important to mention to others to wear masks. In the current situation, it is completely understandable, and that is how it should be. We don't have to wait for professors to demand that we put on our mask. We have to take the initiative ourselves. Also, a large part of the studies has moved to Zoom, which is why it might turn out that you have one lecture on location, then one in Zoom, and then another one on location. So you have this lot of time where you might not want to leave the university. The university has thought about that. We have room set aside for that purpose. You can ask the information desks for the key, and you can attend these Zoom lessons in the lecture halls they were meant to be in the first place, but don't forget to take back the key. An important message to the professors: the students are always ready to support you. It is definitely a complicated situation for you and for us, and of course the best solutions are born in cooperation. So that is why I do recommend that you talk to your students, ask them for feedback about how studies have gone so far, what could be improved, and perhaps they have some good solutions about how to proceed. And they should definitely be listened to, because cooperation does present the best solutions. And the students are always ready to help, because we have seen best practices and we can also share them and help you out with these questions. In the current situation, of course, student life is still going on. We are quite active. We are having events. For example, in September, we already had a very cool virtual information day for freshmen. We went to clean up in the Pirita Beach area near Rusalka, or rather here in Kadriorg. And then we also had the freshman initiation event, and everything adhered to the currently applicable rules, and everything was done with a view to making sure that everybody stays safe. In October, we will take a breather and rest from events, but at the end of October, we will have virtual Halloween events, which might also be held outdoors, keeping in mind safety, of course. In addition, students will receive a newsletter every week with an overview of the latest news about COVID. It also will have information about how many infections there are, what are the measures currently in force, what are the most important topics right now. So I do recommend you look at these news every week at your TLU email address. That's the best way to keep up with the news. Helen? Good morning. First, I would like to say, on behalf and as a member of the Corona Crisis Prevention Committee, that the committee comes together every Monday at 9 a.m. And at these meetings, we review the events that people wish to carry out at the university in order to assess whether these events can be held at the university or not. And here I would like to call upon everybody who is planning on organizing an event at the university. Even spontaneous events should be talked over with the prevention committee, because safety is the most important topic right now on our campus. You can write to our committee via email. If there are urgent questions, we will look at them right away, discuss them, and give the responses as soon as possible. So here I call on all of you to not wait for the next information hour, but turn to us directly. The next thing I wanted to talk about was masks. Erik talked about masks. Our acting rector Priit Reisko talked about masks. Masks are, it is important to wear them in our lecture halls if they are filled to a capacity of over 50%. We have decided that masks are not mandatory across the board all the time at the university, but we do recommend them. So if you feel that it makes the situation safer, of course, wear a mask. Next, the masks themselves. Here I would like to emphasize that it would be a good idea to buy a mask that can be is reusable. There are several types of high-quality masks available on the market, and they should be washed every day. So reusable masks, it doesn't mean that they can be used on a daily basis without washing. They do have to be washed every day. And those masks that are disposed of at the university, I ask you to make sure that they are disposed of in a safe way so that they wouldn't just litter at the university campus. I also give lectures every week. So as a lecturer, what I would like to emphasize is that for quite a few weeks, we have been teaching during this semester, and the perception is that the workload has increased because students do ask a lot of questions by email. They are telling us about falling ill by email. So the volume of emails has definitely increased. So here it's worth thinking about how these emails are all going to be answered and how to kind of pool them. And this is an issue especially for the curriculum curators, how the information spreading is going to be organized, how to support the teachers and professors in order to solve these problems. We don't have answers, ready-made answers at this point, but of course you all do have colleagues that can share their experiences. The same thing with the meetings at the university. Since we are meeting less and less, then we have also realized that Zoom meetings take more time. So it is worth really considering thoroughly whether a meeting is necessary, and appropriate time management by the host or the chair of the meeting is very necessary. So for each point on the meeting agenda, there should be a time limit indicated just to keep time usage under control. So we have to watch that our working time does not exceed normal limits. Coming back to the topic of masks, we have gotten feedback at the rectorate about what to do if students don't wear masks. Who controls that or who checks that? As Erik said, first and foremost, the students themselves should take a look around the lecture hall and loudly speak out and say to their fellow students that they have to wear masks. And if students don't do it, teachers and professors don't have to be embarrassed. They can also say in a loud and clear voice that we are wearing masks now. I do it myself as well. I start my lecture by asking if everybody feels comfortable. And if the answer is no, then by anybody, even one person, then we are all wearing masks. That is the new reality right now. And now I would like to give the floor back to the rector. Thank you. While you are formulating questions and writing them here in the Zoom chat window, I would like to mention some of the results of the remote learning study carried out by 3 of our researchers. These results are preliminary, and we can have more in-depth ones over the fall. So this research looked at the spring, and it found that 60% of teachers and lecturers found that their workload has increased. The situation probably is the same, and the perceived workload increase is probably higher right now. On the positive side, the professors saw that the technical means were evaluated as sufficient, over 5 on a 6-point scale, and also the support was evaluated highly. And it's positive that 60% of professors said in the springtime that they could go on with hybrid learning or hybrid teaching. So having part of the course online and then part of it on location. And here we're not talking about having both online and on location at the same time, but alternately. Another, and I think the most perhaps important part of the research was, or the study was, that while we're talking about the digital skills and competencies of the teachers and technical means, if we have cameras, if we have microphones so they can see and hear each other, but we don't talk a lot about the students when it comes to this distance learning. They are the third part of this triangle. And while the more precise results are being looked into right now, the preliminary ones show that it is a new situation for students as well, and it requires different skills. One thing, for example, that turned out, those who have been at the university longer manage better. Those who are better at self-organizing are better at it. So as lecturers, professors, we have to also take into account that if we are teaching something new, we should actually also ask about what kind of skills and knowledge they already have, so that we will be adding on, not repeating. And I think that is important in going forward as well. There's a note here in the chat already about the app Hoia. We do definitely recommend that everybody downloads the Hoia, H-O-I-A app. This app works on the principle that the more people use it, the better it works. Here I also see some more questions in the Zoom chat window. The first question is, I presume that the events can virtually be organized and they don't have to be agreed with the prevention committee? Yes, of course. And as the person submitting the question here also notes, the university should stay as a community. Another question, what has the rectorate done in order for the university Wi-Fi to deal with the increased burden? We do have some problems with the technology. We can't renew it a little bit at a time. Improving means swapping out everything, which costs about €500,000. At the same time, when we're talking about e-learning, then e-learning should not be impacted that much. What's burdened by Wi-Fi is mostly if we have a lot of students in one place at the same time. If we have e-learning, of course, the students are elsewhere, and that does not present an excessive burden. But of course, it is important to obtain new Wi-Fi devices, and we are doing that. So that is also why we have several different Wi-Fi options. Edu-Roam sometimes works a little bit better than the TLU Open Wi-Fi. I don't see any other questions here right now. Does anyone have anything to add? I would like to add and repeat that at the beginning of this year, we also have a psychologist counselor meant for the teaching staff. So if you feel that you need some advice about how to adapt to this new situation, and if you are feeling the first signs of burnout,
psühholoogiga ühendust võtta. Tema kontaktid leiab personaliosakond.
The contacts are available on the HR part of our website, and you can have a personal counseling session over Skype or one that is in person. So do keep in mind that the semester in a large part is still ahead of us. So mental health is one of the most important things. You see how much in society and in media we are paying attention to it right now. So just the same at the university, we are also emphasizing the importance of mental health. And again, we are trying to be socially distant, but we are social creatures. So if at all possible, I do recommend that in institutes you have smaller morning coffee group sessions to talk about your teaching experiences and to ask for advice from your colleagues. I see that we have about 150 people here in Zoom. 3.5 months, or rather weeks ago, it was over 6,000 viewers together with the viewings of the recorded Infosession. That is a very good thing, and it shows that right now we can proceed as we have been going from the beginning of the semester. I would like to thank you all for the efforts you have been making. It is clear that the situation is complicated, but the result of this joint effort is that right now on campus we don't have any infections, everything is under control. And I hope that this stays like that. We don't have need for another information hour in the short-term perspective. I see that we do have some additional questions here in the chat window. Let's answer those. The first question is, how important is it, if it is important to support the student in the transfer to e-learning, do you have any best practices or recommendations? If students are interested in faring better in e-learning, they should also contact our e-learning center. And we can also, of course, organize courses through that center. But I think that it is important that the teaching staff realizes that this type of learning is different. Then another question, what kind of situation will trigger going over to the red scenario? The red scenario will be applied if the situation gets critical statewide, if the number of infections considerably goes up, but also if the number of infections on campus increases. So in that case, it would be reasonable to employ e-learning across the board. But as I mentioned before, we are in the yellow scenario right now, and I hope we won't have to go into the red one. Thank you very much to Helen and Erik for sharing the information. Thank you very much to all the participants. And as I mentioned before, I do hope that these information hours will be rare. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.